all of you know, people management is one of the most difficult areas of management. Why? Because people are not machines, and we should not consider them as machines also. They are complicated, all of them. And this is what research says, all of them are emotionally unstable at some level or the other. And a good manager needs to anticipate what's going to happen. I use the term anticipate because post facto, whatever you are doing, something has already happened, an issue, a problem has already happened. But anticipating from before will help you keep the team motivation and performance intact. And thus, there is a high need for management. Lot of organizations are growing. Organizations which are big in size require management. But what is the paradox in this entire scheme of people management that we miss? In the paradox, I would remember one of the bad managers that I would have, and I'm using an extreme term called a bad manager, who always judged me from the time I would walk into office. So the normal time that was for starting office was 10 o'clock. Irrespective of all the good work that I would try to do, if I walk in at 10:30, there would be a certain smirk that I would see in that manager. But later I felt this is part of discipline. I should come on time. Why am I feeling bad about it? At that time, it struck me that people don't like to be managed, especially the good ones. Especially the ones who have high productivity. Deep inside, they don't like to be managed. So how do we see this situation as? There is a huge requirement of people management, but intrinsically, people don't like to be managed. They don't like to be told about rules. They don't like to be told about processes. Although if they follow something and then they're appreciated for it, they like it. So to answer this paradox, there is just one summary statement. Eventually you manage things, but you lead people. And in my session, I will try to cover the critical difference between the two of why managing something and leading people, how are they different from each other. You're with me, right? Guys, till now? So moving on, let me tell you what's going on around the world right now. Some bright examples of people management that's going on around the world right now. Marks and Spencer. Anyone can type in the chat group if they are aware of what Marks and Spencer are doing in terms of people management. If anyone is aware, it's a very famous fashion brand. Marks and Spencer, guys, as an organization, does not do marketing at all, if you didn't know. They only focus on prioritized employee engagements. For them, no communication is more communication. So therefore, the more they communicate, the more they motivate their own employees, the more successful they become over time. And that's how they have survived for decades and decades together. Rolls-Royce, one of the famous brands in the automobile sector, and close to the hearts of a lot of people in the organizations that I've worked with in the current industry I'm working with. This organization is synonymous with people staying with them over years. You would be surprised to know over 30% leaders in the Rolls-Royce company started at trainee levels in the company. Over 180 join them every year. And most of them stay back over years. You must be thinking, why am I not taking the most common example? And almost all of you know about this organization, right? The famous G that all of us are aware of. Now, what are they doing to keep their people engaged, their people happy? Google boasts of a 7-acre sports complex, wellness centers in almost all their office complexes, indoor roller hockey rinks, horseshoe pits, subsidized massages. And what does it lead to? It leads to happier and productive employees. They are just making sure that their employees are happier, and therefore it is leading to more and more productivity, more and more output for their organization. Which organization is this? If you know the brand logo of this organization? Can anyone type in the chat box which organization is this? Yeah, all of you are right. Shell. What is Shell doing across the world? Shell has HR policies that believes in teams having a global mindset. You won't believe Shell has 90,000 staff in 90 different countries, and all their policies are focused on the fact that people should have a global mindset. They travel across countries, they understand languages across countries, they understand people across different countries, and therefore that's their way of keeping people engaged. So these are some obviously innovative ways of keeping people engaged as an organization. And as you would understand, why is people management very important? If you see the diagram that's there on the screen right now, other than the one in green, all the other 5 parameters that we have in terms of fair performance evaluation, in terms of feeling a part of one team, in terms of the feeling of togetherness, in terms of demonstrated caring, in terms of the egalitarian treatment. Egalitarian means treating everyone equally, that each one of us are equal to each other. All of that is dependent on how people feel in an organization, how are they managed in an organization, how are they led within an organization. And these are the summation of all the factors that keeps people happy within an organization, as per a famous Harvard research. Maybe the only thing which is career growth is dependent on the greater organization. Everything else is on how you're managed. And that's why people management takes an even more important step, an even more important process in our lives. So guys, if there are any questions, obviously you can keep typing in the chat box. But what I would want to now take your attention towards is some most famous theories of people management coined by some of the most famous people in the world, and therefore should start helping you in terms of how do you manage people better. The most famous one, and the one that is most closest to my heart, is the Golden Circle, if some of you have heard about it. Now, just to ask the people on the call right now, what according to you is the most important thing that makes organizations famous? I can see that Saurabh Batla have asked, what is the name of the book you mentioned in the starting? Saurabh, Leadership Wisdom by Robin Sharma. And we'll keep coming back to the questions. The Golden Circle, guys, in terms of the leadership theory, is the fact of what makes organizations memorable, what makes them successful. As all of you would agree with, every organization on the planet knows what they do. And sadly, most organizations, most of the time, talk about what they do. So you can hear car organizations talking about saying we make great cars. You can hear organizations of different sectors talking about what they manufacture. You can hear Dell talking about we make great computers. Some organizations obviously know how they do it. This is their USP. This is unique selling proposition. This is their value proposition. This is at the heart of how they do what they do. So you would hear a lot of organizations saying that we have great designs, we have products that are easy to use, we make products that are convenient, we are available at your doorstep, we are always there for you. So this is about how they do it. But very few organizations talk about why they do what they do. Let me take a very famous example here to explain you even better. Apple, I use an Apple phone, I use an Apple laptop. Now, when I use two very different products of the same organization, if you look at how Apple actually communicates, Apple very easily could have said, hey, we make great computers. This is their what. And those computers are fantastic in design and easy to use. They're convenient to use. Why don't you buy it from us? our reaction could be, okay, yeah, maybe. But what does Apple actually say? What Apple actually says is, we challenge the status quo all the time. Each time we come to you, we will come up with something new, something different that's not there available in the market right now. How we do it is through great designs and convenient to use products which are easy to use. We just happen to make computers. Now, if you see the difference, as soon as they're talking about the why, people start getting connected. And as people managers, in your day-to-day working, as soon as you start talking about the why, the mission statement, why you're doing what you're doing, people naturally will start getting connected more and more and more with you. Please remember, guys, people very seldom believe in what you do. Some of them, yes, like how you do it, but everyone eventually will get connected to the fact of why you do it. Purpose drives many more people than just the facts of how and what. And that's what famous Simon Sinek talks about in his book, Start with Why. This is the second book I'm suggesting all of you to read, Start with Why. Even in the book Leadership Wisdom, Robin Sharma talks about connecting paycheck with purpose. Money, by all research points, is found to be one of the lowest motivators as compared to the purpose, as compared to starting with why. And why is important? Because why directly talks to that part of the brain which controls behavior. Anytime you talk about a purpose, your why will always connect to that part of your brain. Right? Any questions on the golden circle, on the principle of people management through the golden circle about talking on the why? You can type on the chat box or unmute yourself and ask. Great. So if you're with me, if you can...
Devjit, so I just had a small question here while people type in their questions. How do we relate this golden circle with people management that we're talking about? So are you saying that it is important as people managers for us to ensure that people always know why they are working for, the purpose of the organization, the purpose of the team? Just how do we correlate this golden circle? How do I use this principle while managing or leading a team?
Fantastic question, Vipin. Thanks for asking. For all of you, the golden circle should be the way you operate at work. Actually, the way you operate even at home. Explaining the reason of why you're doing something will always connect people to what you're doing and how you're doing. For example, Vipin, I know you personally, so I know that you're a people manager. And let's say you have set a target of doing 1,000 cars, of selling 1,000 cars in a particular month. Now, telling people that, okay, guys, your target is 1,000 cars. How you do it is obviously by generating more leads through the digital medium, or by generating more leads through below the line BTL activities, etc., may not bring in that motivation. But if you talk about the fact that, guys, we want to become the biggest player in the personal mobility space, and I want Mumbai to be the first city which becomes the biggest player in terms of Kardeko as an organization in the personal mobility space. That will make them themselves realize whether they want to sell 1,000 cars or sell 1 million cars for that matter. So that's the why that I am urging all of you to translate into as compared to the what and how. Vipin, have I answered your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so, sorry. Give me a moment. So if my screen is still visible. Okay, so let's move to the second theory, which is the theory of self-leadership.
There is a question that is there on the chat box, and maybe we can answer that before we move to the next slide. Sonal asks, can the why also be monetary goals, or should it only be something more egalitarian?
So, Sonal, good question. Normally, the why connects to the emotional part of the brain. Now, the emotional part of the brain, research suggests, is money for about 20% audience in the professional world and not 100%. So yes, the why can be monetary if you have an audience and as a leader or as a manager, you're aware that money is the single biggest motivator for them. It will be very important as a people manager for you to understand what motivates the people you manage, what motivates your team members, what motivates your family members. If it's money, yes, why can be money, but very rarely is why money in the broader sense of things. It is normally a purpose, it is normally a vision. I read a very famous vision statement by Max Hospital, for example. We save 1 million lives a year. Now that's the why. You don't need to say anything else after that, because the doctors, the nurses, even the health staff, everyone knows that our why is saving 1 million lives eventually. So if I have answered your question, so okay, so let's move to the second theory, which is the theory of self-leadership. As D. Hawk famously suggests, that if you have to lead, first invest about 40% of your time in managing yourself, which is the second theory that I'll talk about today. Now, managing yourself, guys, would involve three basic parts that I will talk about today. The first part in managing yourself would be about self-awareness. Are you even aware that whether are you a good leader? Are you a good manager? Now, the way that normally I do it, or I have seen many great leaders do it, and that's how I've learned it, is the character trait check. I normally do it after kind of I wake up in the morning once a week, sometimes once a month if I forget it to do it regularly. This is when you think about your best and worst leaders that you have worked with. Now, let's say you think about the worst leader. Once you think about that person, look at the mirror. What's your facial expressions? Normally, it will have a sad, bored, angry expression on your face. Now, think about why do you think that person was the worst leader that you have met? Was that person always rude? Was that person used to hide information from you? Was that person unfair, biased? Was that person especially had hatred towards you? So whatever that character trait was, now comes the important part. Rate yourself on 1 to 10 on that particular character trait. So for example, I used to not like one of my managers because they used to hide information from me. So when I started rating myself on that character, initially I got a 2 out of 10. But because I was self-aware after that, I started getting better over time. So 6 months later, when I again rated myself on that same bad character trait, I got an 8 out of 10 for myself. You can do it on the best leaders also. Who were the best leaders you have worked with? Obviously, you'll be happy. You're ecstatic. You feel joyful when you think about that person. But what character trait about that person did you like the most? When you think of that, and then rate yourself on that character trait, you become more self-aware and therefore become better and better and better over time on that particular trait. If something can make you happy or unhappy, it can definitely make someone else happy or unhappy. And that's what self-awareness is all about, which is the first character trait. The second simple exercise that we can do is self-reflection. Self-reflection is a little different from self-awareness. Self-reflection is thinking about 5 minutes a day on how your day was. This has to be done daily. This cannot be done once a month, once a year. Daily, ideally. And on that 5 minutes, don't talk to anyone else. Maybe maintain a diary, which is a very traditional way of doing it, or just think about it. About the challenges that you faced in the day and how did you do about those challenges, or the challenge you are going to face tomorrow, and how are you going to face those challenges. This is just self-reflection. Was I good? Was I bad? Can I do better tomorrow? Okay, this big project is coming up tomorrow. This is not about feeling anxious. This is about self-reflecting by having detachment from what you are doing on the day to day. This is a moment where you are just with yourself. The last one, guys, is self-regulation. Now, if you want to become bigger, stronger, more powerful in life, you will also have to refrain from doing certain things. If you see leaders delegate a lot of things and observe from a distance. Self-regulation is all about understanding, am I supposed to do this or someone else can do that job? And therefore refrain and ask yourself the importance of this job. So as soon as you start to do something, ask yourself, okay, is it important enough for me to do it? Is it urgent on a scale of 1 to 10? If you have heard about the urgency and importance 2x2 metric. Is it urgent? Then I'll do it. If it's not, maybe I'll delegate it or maybe I'll do it later. So that's self-regulation, refrain. So the guys, very simple 3 steps in terms of self-leadership: being aware of how good or bad a leader you are, by doing the character trait check, by having self-reflection, 5 minutes a day. What kind of challenges did I face today? How did I do in it? And eventually, by doing self-regulation, whatever you're going to do, shall I do it? How important is it to do it? This helps in managing anger also. Right, you guys with me till now? This self-leadership is something that you find useful. If I can have a quick chat, Vipin, if you can help me.
Yeah, very useful, Debojit. I think people are finding it very useful. What I think can also help is if, for example, you mentioned self-awareness of your traits as a leader. What would be some of the traits that I can check for whether I have these checks or whether I did well on these parameters today or not? Are there some big ones that we should always be aware of and look that we are following or not?
Good question, Vipin. Maybe guys, you can type in your chat box, what is the character trait you absolutely hated about the leader you worked with? And just type in the chat box and Vipin, help me read them. What is a character trait that you absolutely hated? A personality trait that you hated in even the manager that you liked working with, but one trait that you absolutely hated?
Yeah, I think people are saying micromanagement. Saurabh says his manager probably used to micromanage. Vishal says lack of trust on his team. There's someone 1+60. He feels demotivator is a pretty bad trait that he has come across. Preferences for a particular leader, having a bloated ego. Ruchi says, Shudipto says non-delegation. Prakhar says very confrontational in approach and derogatory remarks. So quite a big list there.
Yeah. So guys, you know the answer. So Vipin, you have the answer to your question. Whatever is bad for you is bad for the world. And being self-aware is how good or bad you yourself are in that particular trait. So if you didn't like someone giving preferences to someone they love, are you giving preferences to someone you love in your team and therefore others are hating it? Are you having a bloated ego and therefore others are hating it? So hope Vipin answered your question.
Yes. Thank you.
And similarly, the best trait, of course, something that you love in your leader, and that's on the self-awareness. Self-reflection is spending time with yourself. Self-regulation is refraining. As a leader, you can't do everything and you should not do everything. Are you delegating enough?
Tavish had a question. He says, what if we don't have a point of reference for self-awareness? So if I have not come across any leader which with a highlight good or bad trait, how do you then check your performance?
So I think self-reflection then comes into play in terms of what are some of the things that by your own conscience you feel that you are not very good at, and how can you become better at it, or a feedback that you have received from your manager or your colleague on something that you are not good at. and how can you make it better at, or a positive feedback that you have received from your colleague or your manager or your team member, and how can you become even better at it, Prabir? So that can be a good way of improving your self-awareness. But very rarely will you find that you are not surrounded by people that you don't like. And the self-awareness is not only a character trait of a leader, it can be a character trait of a colleague that you want to avoid, that you are not very comfortable around. And that's why kind of brings in the importance.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, hello everyone. Nabil here. Devojit, I have a question. When we talk about self-leadership and the very first point, self-awareness. So while determining our own character trait, can we concern with our close one or the one which we follow, or it's just we who need to observe or understand our character trait?
Good question, Nabil. Ideally, it should be just you, because it's about self-awareness. You can consult someone before you check the character trait, but once you have taken that character trait and then you want to evaluate yourself, it should just be about you. Great. I'll move on to the third one, which is a very famous theory by Mr.
Vishal, this side. I have a question.
Yeah, Vishal. Vishal, your voice.
Please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, Vishal. Please go ahead.
Vishal, will come back to your internet connection may not be perfect. You can ask it in the chat box and Vipin will take your question. Very famous next theory that I want you guys to kind of go through with me is the theory X and the theory Y. This is the assumption of managing people, where I have mentioned through Mr. Douglas about the two extreme ways of managing people. Theory X type of managers assume that their team members dislike work. They will have to be forced or coerced to make the effort to work. They must be warned with punishment all the time. They avoid responsibility. They don't have the motivation, the aspiration to work, and they don't have the creativity and will always resist change. That's theory X of management. And I'm sure you would have met a lot of people, a lot of managers who believe in theory X also. Parallelly, there is a theory called theory Y, which is an assumption that the people in the team are always motivated to work. They're interested to work. They use self-direction and self-control while they're working. They are always open to responsibilities. They are logical, they're creative, they're innovative, they're loyal, they're committed. Now comes the interesting part, guys. Even as leaders, we keep swaying between theory X and theory Y. If we are ourselves in a good mood, we tend to move to theory Y. If we are ourselves in a foul mood, we tend to move a little towards theory X. Research says theory Y normally tends to give about 2.5 times better output from the same people in your team. From the same team members in your team, 2.5 times greater output. Just by assuming that your team members are motivated, they're interested to work, they are committed, they are logical, they're creative, they use self-direction, their output increases. And therefore, this is a very, very famous theory on managing people that Mr. Douglas McGregor had proposed, which is a very simple theory of what you're supposed to assume when you start work, and especially in the current era where people don't want to be managed, they want to be led. Theory Y kind of becomes very, very useful. And there are a lot of studies that you can study on these. Now comes, and I am moving a little faster, now comes the most important one. All of you must be thinking all of this is fine, but I have some very difficult people that I have in my team, or as my manager, or as my colleagues. How many of you can, a quick vote in the chat box, how many of you have had difficult people to work with in your professional life? A quick yes or a no in the chat box. Vipin, if you can help.
Yes, most people have come across such people that we're talking about. And interestingly, just coming back to the theory why bit, just to take a minute on that, it is also in sync with something called the Pygmalion effect, which we see. This theory, this Pygmalion effect, was named after I think a Greek sculptor who fell in love with his own sculpture, which was created. And so the theory goes that whatever you believe the person who you are working with, those qualities kind of get developed in the person. So just assuming that your people are motivated and interested to work can increase their ability to, as you said, effectiveness by 2.5 times is a testimony to the fact. There's something called theory Z as well. I think Riddhi mentioned it on the chat group. I'm wondering if that is a theory that is of significance or is a new fad which is coming up. Yeah, Riddhi mentioned theory Z, some Japanese and American style of management. Riddhi, if you want to unmute yourself and maybe speak about for a minute about that.
Hi. So I just read about theory Z, which is a combination of theory X and Y, and it has been taken from the Japanese model where people are given the liberty to lead and monitor themselves while keeping in balance all the. I mean, it's about leading people and giving them freedom also. I don't remember much, but I read about it, so that's why I was mentioning it.
Yeah, Riddhi, thanks for the input. It's developed by the famous Japanese doctor William Auchi. You're right.
Yeah.
Which is a combination of the two, which takes into account about 70% of theory Y and about 30% of theory X. Japan is a more authoritarian or a slightly more dictatorial culture as a culture also, and therefore 30% of theory X still works. And you're absolutely right. Thanks for adding it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so moving on, people, in terms of something that has been very close to my heart in my first 10 years of employment, about how to deal with difficult people. I guess all of you have met these specific kinds of people. I put the picture of Vivek Oberoi. These are the past ka hero, or the heroes of the past. These kind of people will always keep talking about their laurels of the past. I built this organization. I have come from a very, very famous place before. I have always been the best performer in all the things that I have done till now, etc., etc. And always are talking about the past ka hero. This is one type. The second type that I have met a lot of times are the non-listeners. Irrespective of what you are talking to them, they'll either be WhatsApping on their phone, very rarely raise their head and actually listen to you, or they will be busy on their laptop, or actually even playing a game and just saying, say what you're saying. These are the non-listeners in terms of the difficult people. Then obviously you have the rude type, someone who is always not courteous enough, slightly rude in terms of how they would work, lack of patience, the rude types. You would have also come across the one-up ones. These are the kind of people who is always have a story which is slightly better than you. So if you tell, do you know what I did? 120% of my target, and he will smile and say, I did 122%. If you say that I have gone to 4 countries till now, he'll say, I have gone to 5 countries till now. If you say that I was watching this particular serial yesterday night, he'll say, I watched 2 simultaneous serials last night. So this is the one-up variety, who is always talking in parties, in get-togethers, in offices about something that he has done slightly better than you. Right, all of you have met these kinds of people in your life. I don't see all the videos at one go, but I can see the nods. And also, you must have pictured someone when I spoke about each one of those varieties in your head. That one particular person who is a one-up, or a non-listener, or a past ka hero, or the rude guy, right? Now, obviously, we have all met these particular type of people, but it's very important for us to understand that someone else's bad behavior should not be the reason for our heart attack, right? I mean, if irrespective of someone, how bad someone else is, it would be very important for us to understand that dealing with difficult people should not be the reason of why we take all the stress or all the anxiety. And also it becomes very important to avoid bias. If you see a very strong personality of a person you don't like, you would end up saying that that person is very aggressive. यार ये बहुत aggressive है, इसके साथ कैसे काम किया जा सकता है. But if you see a best friend of the same variety, you will say, yeah, he's very motivated. He's one of the most motivated person I've met. If you see that person you don't like, who is trying to push his point, who is not changing from his mindset, you will normally say, बहुत जिद्दी है, very stubborn guy. But on the other hand, if your best friend is doing it, you will normally say he's very headstrong. Once he decides something, he goes for it, right? So while avoiding your own heart attack, it's also important to avoid bias while managing these difficult people and treat them neutrally. And therefore, some very simple mantras that I'll talk about. The first one is, when you're about to face this difficult person, take a deep breath. Now this always helps. Count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What this does is it tells your brain that a lion is not chasing you. Because the reaction by our own body to facing a difficult person is exactly the same when a lion is chasing us. When a lion is chasing you, if you take a deep breath or count to 10, he will come and eat you, right? But if you're facing a difficult person and then you take a deep breath or count to 10, the brain tells the rest of the body, calm down, relax. A lion is not chasing you. And therefore, you don't need to have that heart attack. And you are much more stable. And this is the medical reason of taking the deep breath. First one. Second one, in your conversation, ask questions rather than make statements. Statements sound like decisions. Statements sound like opinions, which if you don't like that person, most probably that person also doesn't like you. And therefore asking a question, do you think this is the right way of doing it? Do you think we are not on the same page? Do you think that what you just spoke about has a better opinion or option of doing it? So asking question always helps. Third is, predict the bad news from before. Now, if you have faced this person, you already know that he's going to do a one-up when you face him. He's going to be rude when you talk to him. He's not going to listen when you talk to him. Predicting the bad news tells your brain that this is going to happen. Why worry? So you might not even need the deep breath. You're already prepared. Predicting the bad news also gives you a pleasant surprise sometimes if that person actually turns out to be good that day. So predicting the bad news from before helps. Influencing behavior helps. What is influencing behavior? Using the word we is an influencing behavior. I notice we are facing problems in communicating with each other. I notice we are struggling to solve this problem. I notice we both are losing our cool right now. We is influencing behavior. Making statements of both people together is influencing behavior. So influencing behavior helps in avoiding that difficult person that you have met. This point, guys, the next point is to do with our childhood. If you remember, if we liked someone or liked a certain point, we would go and give an M&M or a chocolate to that person. And you immediately move from an enemy zone to a friend zone. Why not do it with this person also? Just say, I like the fact that you stated a great point in the last meeting. Or just send an email, great job done in the last project that you have done. One small word of genuine appreciation, not for the sake of it, genuine appreciation always helps in moving from an enemy zone to a friend zone. And obviously, as the famous Bhagavad Gita says, separate the papi from the pap, label the behavior and not the person. Always helps. So if you don't like a certain trait, a certain behavior, a certain moment, label that and not on the person, even in your own head and even in communicating with that person. Right? And therefore, eventually forgive. Forgiveness is a lot of times compared to having a large heart, being extremely empathetic. Forgiveness has nothing to do with the person in front. Forgiveness has everything to do with yourself. When you forgive, you feel lighter. You actually forgive yourself from that baggage, from that pain that you're carrying about that difficult person. You don't even have to go and tell him, I forgive you. Just while you're going to sleep at night, just tell yourself, I forgive him. I forgive her. And see that you will already feel good about yourself. So these are some things about dealing with difficult people, guys. And therefore, one of the famous theories that I use for myself and could be very, very useful for all of you also. So 3 things that we have kind of done together today till now. The golden circle, of course, which is focusing on the why. Self-leadership, which is about being aware of the different situations. The theory X and theory Y, which is the different ways of managing people and how to manage or deal with difficult people, which is the 4th one that we have done till now. In terms
there are
of
just a couple of questions, Debujit.
Yeah.
Maybe we can take them before moving forward. So one is from Tamanna, who says, how do you deal with someone who's not difficult, but there's a conflict of interest? For example, there's a deliverable to meet, but the person does not care about the deliverable and feels that there is something else which is more important. How do we take care of that?
Yeah, a good question, Tamanna. If I can answer that first, I would come to that in some of the specific skills that I talk about. One big skill that is there is empathy that a people manager needs to have, which is in this case empathizing on their deliverable, which will automatically help that person having a mutual respect for your deliverable. So if you want to get something done, first understand their world. I think naturally that person will understand yours over a period of time. It will not happen overnight, but over a period of time. But I'll cover that point in my future slides. Yeah, Vipin?
Yeah, and I think the second one is from Sudipto. This is more of a comment on I think it was in the last part. I think he says that the act of forgiveness without actually confronting the person will only solve the problem momentarily, but the problem may surface again. And in his opinion, the best thing is to probably take that guy out for a coffee or something and have a heart-to-heart chat.
So yeah, I think Vipin, Shudita, good point, but I would like to slightly differ on one point here, that once you forgive, you yourself get free from that anger or frustration that you're carrying with yourself. And actually in these situations, you get more frustrated with yourself than with the person itself. Then that's what research also suggests.
It was not more about that forgiveness part. It was about the last part, which is taking a deep breath and asking questions. So, in my experience, although these steps can be practiced, but that will lead to a momentary result, and the problem might resurface again. So, what according to my experience of dealing with difficult people, and there have been pretty much difficult people which I have dealt with, and I myself consider if I do a self-awareness on me, I have been difficult also, and I am not an easy guy to deal with, and I have been difficult to my bosses, and some of my ex-bosses had a hard time managing me. Having that trait about myself, which I'm definitely working on as a self-awareness thing. But what I felt is that while I was difficult, a simple, candid, free-flowing, heart-to-heart conversation with the person with whom I was difficult with helped a lot to ease the things and ease the expectation, ease what is in his mind, what is in my mind, why I'm being difficult to deal with, and that led to some good results. So I have started practicing that to just solve the problem at the very beginning itself. I mean, get the person to a candid talk. Let him talk. I mean, it's always 80-20. While I maintain a listening attitude of 20%, 80% time, but I let the person talk his heart out, so that I can understand what's bothering him. Where are we not in the same page in achieving the vision which has been set?
Great point, Sudipto. I think a very good point of having a conversation, and can definitely be added in the list of to-dos in how to deal with difficult people. Having a great heart-to-heart conversation is a great start in this process. Thanks, Sudipto.
Hi, Devajit. Saurabh here. I have one question.
Yeah, Saurabh.
Yeah. So, Devajit, many times people are not aware of their own characteristics or traits. Many times that happens. Or either you can say they are not aware about 30% of their traits or 40% of their traits. So, in that case, should we go for an external feedback? And if yes, if your answer is yes, what is the structure or framework we should follow for the same?
Very good question, Saurabh. Definitely yes is the answer. If you are aware, about 50% people in the United States actually take external help in terms of a psychiatrist to understand their own behavior, although it's a taboo in a country like India. And therefore, external feedback, if you ask of a structure, it should first obviously be the people you trust, but in your mind is the most neutral in giving you an opinion about yourself. So don't ask your mother, for example, because normally you will always have a very positive viewpoint of yourself, and that's how mothers are, thankfully. Ask someone whom you think you will give you a very neutral opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vipin, if you can keep helping to mute participants.
Hey, hi, Devojit. Just one question from my end. This is Prem here. Hi. Just a brief precursor to the conversation. You know, Devojit has been my senior in SPJAN, and one thing I have always known that he has been very self-driven and self-motivating. And I think I've seen you how you have moved across your career, and that thing continues. And this session was generally good for me because I happened to connect with Vipin also. Vipin was also, you know, my ex classmate in engineering college. So coming to the question, Devojit, just one thing I want to understand is, see, talking about dealing with difficult people, you know, what I understand by your views, end of the day, it's more about managing yourself. But practically, when we face such difficult people, and I believe some people are genuinely extremely difficult, you know, because they come with a different set of belief systems. See, when people are managing a small team, you know, they have a different belief system and different approach towards controlling, or controlling a team. But as the team grows, somebody like working in a big organization, in a big leadership position, managing a huge team, they typically rule with an iron fist, you know, and they come with a very, very different belief system. They believe that arm twisting is the ultimate thing which helps. It's also because, you know, they want to get their results in a very short period of time. It's sometimes very, very difficult to deal with such people. Just wanted your view on, a more practical standpoint, you know, in dealing with such people.
Thanks, Prem, for asking, and glad to connect back with you after a long time. Prem, it would be first very important to develop a connect with that person. And that connect will come through genuine effort from our side in order to understand what kind of learnings and past history they have had across organizations, and also reaching out to that person through various forms of communication they are comfortable with. Could be an email, could be just a WhatsApp, could be face-to-face, could be participating in their initiatives that they are taking. Unless you develop a connect, it will not be easy for them to give in to you. Once you develop a connect, start having something that Sudipto was suggesting in terms of conversations about what you have felt about their leadership style till now, and what's your opinion about that particular leadership style. So first, in my mind, two simple steps. One, developing a connect by aligning to forms of communication and forms of working styles that they are aligned to. Once there is a connect that's there, then starting a conversation with them. But that's my point of view. Obviously there are lots of other people on the call, on the meeting, who can have a point of view. I can keep typing. I'll just keep moving, Prem, just for yeah. So guys, I have covered certain theories. I would now come to, in the second half, which is the last about 15-20 minutes of the session, about certain skills that becomes very important in terms of managing people. And this is a very simple structure that I have developed around it, called the peace head. Which are the skills that are important? This is an acronym. So every letter stands for something. And the first one that I would want to talk to you is about the P. Any guesses for people who are not aware already? What's the P in managing people? What does P stand for in the peace head? Any answers that you would want to talk about? Anupam says P.
Patience.
Who said patience?
Yeah, I said patience. Riddhi.
Hi, Riddhi. Okay, we have Samad saying patience also. We have Tamanna saying patience also. Shikha says peace. You're right, patience. I think Riddhi guessed it with the picture also. Patience is one of the most important skills in managing people. Very highly underrated, but one of the most important skills. The good news though, guys, is even if you're not patient right now, it can be improved. The first step in that is examining your reactions when you're confronted with minor inconveniences. A traffic is one big place where you can test your own patience. Long grocery lines during these corona times, or standing in a long ATM line. Just see how you're behaving, how you're feeling. Seeing a child cry for long enough on a flight or in a train, because of which you're yourself not able to sleep. These are all small tests of patience that you see in your day-to-day life, right? But patience has always been a very, very critical skill for leaders. I've mentioned about the Emancipation Proclamation. Do you know who did this? Who ended slavery in the United States? Any guesses on the chat box? You can also unmute and...
Martin Luther King.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln is the right answer. Who had to wait for years and years and years, but did not give up. Huge example of patience. And there is no better example in history than Mr. Nelson Mandela himself, who always said that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Again, very, very patient through all the trying years. So guys, these leaders, these managers who are patient because they're not insecure about their own positions. They know that everything is temporary. Even their own current position is temporary, and someone else in future will take over. And therefore they choose today to serve their team members. They don't wait for tomorrow. They choose today to do acts of kindness to not only their team members, but to every person they meet on a day-to-day life. And that's why when there's a problem, there's a pandemic, they're patient, they're calm, they respond rather than react. Being secure also helps these people highlight top performers in the team. It helps them to make the unpopular decisions. It helps them to not take the position for granted and always stay grounded. And all of these are outcomes of being patient, and something that all of us should practice in our day-to-day life. And that's why you see some managers always calm, always patient about taking the big decisions. The second skill, anyone can guess what this is? What does E stand for? Yeah. Sharon says ego. I think everyone else is correct. Guys, you're right, stands for empathy. There is no better skill in my mind than empathy in terms of managing people. And empathy is about understanding their situation. The classic dictionary example of empathy is getting into someone else's shoes. It's different from sympathy, of course, where you are sympathizing, you're feeling bad for someone else. Empathy is getting into their shoes and living their world. And therefore, you stand up for them. A good leader will always think about his people before he thinks about himself. Very obvious, but the single most biggest differentiator in differentiating a good leader from a bad. Mahatma Gandhi once said, I'm a Muslim, a Hindu, a Christian, and a Jew together. And so are all of you. Prime examples of empathy. And empathy also makes sure that the leader understands his people amazingly well and respects that all of them have separate strengths and weaknesses. So in the public, the focus is always on the strength. They will always talk about the good areas about their people. But there's a subtle awareness of the weaknesses to constantly improve it. On a one-on-one, they're constantly working on the weaknesses. And that's what empathy is all about. I'll give you a great example of empathy that I came across when I was preparing this deck. Similar to the current corona times, 1980s was a time for AIDS. Obviously a new frightening disease with no cure at all. In fact, at that time, people thought AIDS chhune se phailta hai. So AIDS will spread if you touch someone. Or even sitting on the same toilet seat will spread AIDS. And people with AIDS were getting quarantined just like corona today. 50% of the people, as you can see, polled in the US that all of them having AIDS should be quarantined. And then came the supreme example of empathy from Princess Diana herself. She actually went into the first AIDS unit in UK and shook hands with a patient without wearing gloves. And that changed people's perception of the disease forever. And this is a supreme example of empathy, which is by leading by example. So that's the second bit, which is about empathy in the entire thing of Peace Head. The third thing, guys, I have already written is about accountability. Huge one in being a great people manager, by being accountable, by saying, I am the owner of this ship. I am accountable when things go wrong, when you screw up something in your current work. This is always the trait of willing to your own mistakes or taking the blame of your team. It isn't the sign of weakness. It is an admission that no one has all the answers all the time. And if my team member doesn't have the answer, I will stand up for him. If they have done something wrong, I will stand up for him. Now, what does this do? It builds respect within your team and with the upper management. It's not only about your team, it's about your colleagues, also about your upper management also, who see that you are standing up when something has gone wrong. Which is talking about accountability. Roosevelt has famously said, I accept responsibility for choosing good over evil. That's saying that I will always choose the right things. And also a very famous quote from one of my favorite movies, with greater powers comes greater responsibility. Can someone guess on the chat box or on audio which movie is this? This is my blessing, this is my curse.
Yep, I think people are aware.
So that's about accountability. That you know that being in the position is a matter of blessing as well as a curse, and the curse comes in equal quantity as the blessing. You're supposed to stand up when it is needed. There are very simple steps, guys, in being accountable. First, don't blame. If something goes wrong, don't blame. Second, always look in the mirror. Was I also a part of it? Before feeling great that you have taken the blame, also look in the mirror. Was I actually a part of it? Third is engineering the solution. Actually reach a solution by coming together. Involve people in the process of getting the solution also. I'll move on to one of my favorite ones. What does C stand for? What can C stand for as per you guys? Can people write in the chat box or unmute and talk?
Communicate.
Yeah, communicate. I think Dharvi, that was your voice.
No, that's Riddhi.
Riddhi, hi. Vipin, You want to?
Compassion. Yeah, we have compassion and conversation. These are the two most voted options here that people think C stands for.
So guys, in my C, what I've written is communication. If leaders or as people managers, you can't communicate, then whatever you're thinking, deciding, feeling will not reach your audience, will not reach your team. Let me give you very prime examples. I'll mention some famous speeches from history, and you can mention on the chat box who said it. Let's go for the first one. Sisters and Brothers of America, Chicago 1893. Can someone mention on the chat box who said it? Vipin, if you can help.
I don't know who. Tanvi says Luther King, but I think Swami Vivekananda is the answer. Most people have answered it correctly. Swami Vivekananda.
So let's see one more example. Quit India, Delhi, 1942. Who said this?
Gandhiji. Tanvi says, Prem says Mahatma Gandhi, Arvind, Abhishek, everybody says Mahatma Gandhi. I think you're right.
Great, I think we are on the same page. Who said we shall fight on the beaches? London, 1940.
My answer is Churchill, and so does Abhay, Anupam, Shikha. Everyone thinks it's Winston Churchill.
Yeah, guys, these are goosebumpish statements. I have a dream, Washington, 1963.
Yeah. This is an easy one, I think. No answers, yeah. We have Rakesh, the first one to answer. Prem, everyone says Martin Luther King.
Give me blood and I will give you freedom. Burma, 1944.
Rakesh again. Prem then says Netaji, Geetika, Abhay, Arvind, Abhishek, Subhash Chandra Bose.
What is all of this doing, guys? Look at this clear communication. As a leader, these statements have moved nations. Forget about a small team that all of us are managing, or those 100 people, those 500, 1000 people that we talk to. Clear communication helps in getting the point across while filling it with intent, with purpose, with passion. And if one small line from 50, 100 years before have given you the answer without even me giving you a hint, then imagine what clear communication can do for generations. And therefore, the ability to clearly communicate becomes one of the most important people management skill. It helps in persuading others. It helps in forging working relationships. It helps in advocating for your department with upper management. Very important. If you want to make it big within your organization, you'll have to keep the upper management in loop at all times. Clear communication helps in getting the point across in good and bad times. Narendra Modi coming at 8 o'clock at night clearly communicates what he wants from the nation. Unlike Donald Trump, who is changing his modes of communication every other month, every other day. And therefore, when you vote for leaders across the world, you can see Mr. Modi is already one of the better ones. And therefore, clear communication becomes a big one in your day-to-day life as a manager also. In Peace Head, in the last E in Peace, what does E stand for? Can I have some answers? As per this picture also, the picture is a giveaway.
Excellence.
I hear excellence. So in the chat,
we have empowerment. Atishay and Arvind think it's empowerment. Energy, energetic. Tanvi says energetic. Neha says excel, kind of in sync with Nabi. Empower or evolve, 1 plus 16. Anupam says equality. That's a good one. Gaurav Handa says empower. Saurabh says empowerment.
Thanks, guys. E here, what I have taken as one of the very important leadership skill is empowerment. How successful you can make your team members is directly dependent on how well you're able to empower your team members. It's about giving the tools they need to succeed. Some of you said micromanagement is something you don't like in your leaders. Empowerment is just the opposite, where you delegate and then give them the tools to succeed. It can be done through relevant decision making, giving them access to data, constantly training them, defining boundaries for them. Tell them, ये decisions तुम ले सकते हो, ये decisions तुम नहीं ले सकते. Empowerment is part of that. Assigning mentors to them, again, which helps them in becoming better and better. Deciding KPIs and KRAs are part of empowerments. That this is your job right now, and I empower you to take decisions within your KPIs and KRAs. And a leader can do it because they know the career progression graph for their employees. And that graph is aligned and discussed well in advance. And that discussion keeps the members on their toes, motivated and very clear about the bigger picture. And as you know, a leader is about the bigger picture. Empowering team members makes them know what is their role in that bigger picture. If you remember, I started with why. When you tell the why, let's say you're the manager in Max Hospital, you tell we have to save 1,000,000 lives in a year. In that, as the doctor in Max Hospital, Gurgaon, if you contribute to saving, let's say 100 lives this month, then you are in place. So empowering in taking decisions while saving those 100 lives makes them a part of that bigger picture and also empowered to do their job well. And in every small thing, empowering is not about micromanaging. It's about delegating and giving them the freedom, a taste in the overall success. And very importantly, giving them the credit also when they do well. Disney does it very famously through their Reward Good Work program. If you are aware, Disney promotes their cast members in all parts of the world. So people dress up as Disney characters and actually reward good work for their employees as well as for the outside world in the Disneylands, if you have visited Disneyland ever. So that's in a way empowering. Google does it through the Nurture Creativity program. Google has a Google Cafe. Google has in Google Cafe where people come and talk about empowering decisions that they can take. Google Moderator is a certain tool that Google uses inside the company where everyone can vote for any important company decision that is happening. So these are all ways of making people feel empowered in their organizations. And as a manager, you should be focusing on empowering your team members. Moving on the P side, the first H. Here, I'm not quizzing this one. H stands for honesty, guys. Honesty saves everyone's time. Honesty is about not having a double face. It's about saying what is the truth. It's about breeding transparency in the workplace. If you don't want to share something with your team members, say that I don't want to share this because of ABC reasons. Honesty is about not having a double face, and it also comes from not having insecurity. I've written a quote on the left. Can people who have not already are aware tell me whose quote is this? I'm brutally honest. I always look at things from their point of view as well as mine, and I know when to walk away. Can anyone guess who said this? One prime example of honesty in the current era in the corporate world.
Yeah, we have Anupam here guessing it's Steve Jobs.
Quite close, Anupam. It's Indra Nooyi. She has a current net worth of $144 million, about 1,100 crores. And the famous ex-CEO of Pepsi. And moving on, therefore, the E. Can someone guess what this E stands for in my piece head, the acronym that I have designed for people skills, people management skills? What does E stand for?
Engage.
Engaged. Okay, Riddhi. Any other guesses?
We have entertainment. I think it looks like a mall, the pic. So Anupam says it's entertainment.
It's actually an office space.
Environment of a workplace.
Environment. Okay. Okay.
Prakhar on the chat box also says thinks it's environment, the kind of environment that we are providing people to work in.
Okay. Interestingly, E guys stands for elasticity. It stands for flexibility at the workplace. Yes, environment is a subset of flexibility. Now, when I say flexibility, I mean flexible work timings, flexible work from home policies, understanding that each person is unique in themselves and allowing them to work in a way they want to work. Flexibility would mean flexible organizational structures that some companies follow, if you're aware. Flexibility or elasticity, what I'm trying to explain here, is about allowing the freedom for people to work in a way that they would want to work. This picture that you can see is a picture of BCG, the New York office, which provides a certain environment, of course, which can help them to sit and work out of anywhere, right? They feel they're sitting out of working out of a garden, or actually a restaurant, or actually over stairs, to just make sure that their creative juices are flowing at the maximum. That's one example, of course. And also knowing when to be flexible and when to be firm is an important aspect with people management. Right? If a person is highly productive at home, it would be stupid to call them to office every day. And if a person, for example, is half an hour late to office but still is 5 times more productive than others, it would be stupid to drive discipline with them. So flexibility is about knowing what to allow and what not to allow. Can anyone guess which office is this, the name of the company? That was BCG, the previous one, Boston Consulting Group.
Google. I think Anupam is guessing it is Google.
Yeah, Anupam is right. It's Google. And this is the kind of environment in terms of the offices that they have had. Moving on, one very important one in A that I have mentioned without any secrets is the active listening skills. Now, active listening skills is the art of listening to understand and not listening to respond. If your team member is telling you something, sharing a very important part of their life, of their family, of their problems that they're facing in their day-to-day life, of a certain business need, of a certain customer, are you listening attentively? Critical skill in terms of a skill that you are supposed to carry, which is the active listening skill. Active listening skills also have a very important part, which is active sharing. Active sharing would mean that you are not keeping any bars with yourself while you are sharing, and you are trying to share the most transparent picture of what you feel about their current situation. Active sharing is also related in a way to a very different concept in conversations called a deep conversation, where you're actually sharing your secrets, your fears, your successes, your failures. So basically, when you listen as if you're sitting in a movie. In a movie, you don't talk, right? In fact, when you talk, people ask you to shut up. And when you're sharing with an open heart. The last one in my piece head is can anyone guess what this D is?
Direction.
Yeah, I have someone saying direction. You can always, whoever speaks can mention their name. That so D, guys, here stands for decision making. And I have put some brilliant decisions of the history of the corporate world in order to tell you how much decision making for leaders is very important. You would never want to work in a team where the leader is lousy, is slow in taking a decision. One big one was Henry Ford's decision to just double the wages of his employees so that they stop getting viewed as hands and legs and start getting viewed as valuable assets. Henry Ford is the founding member for Ford as an organization. Sam Walton, I think a lot of you would know who Sam Walton is. He started Walmart. His decision to launch a simple Saturday morning meeting for all employees has changed the way Walmart works and has made it one of the biggest organizations of all times. Jack Welch's decision, all of you know who Jack Welch is, founder of GE, to fund the education organization called Crotonville, a first-class training center, has set the tone for thousands of businesses of the future. It has also actually helped develop a generation of leaders at GE. So these decisions, however small they might look while taking them, has helped shape companies in the future. And decision making can be as small as deciding what to do rather than delaying the decision further and further because you don't want to take the blame just in case something goes wrong. So yeah, I would pause here for a moment to take questions, if any, in terms of the entire piece head structure that I have mentioned, in terms of all the parts in piece head. Vipin, if you can help, if there are doubts.
Yeah. So there is one question from Sonal. I think this is about the elasticity bit. I think people can type their the questions in the chat box while this is getting answered. So Sonal asks, isn't letting anybody flout discipline just because somebody is more productive? Isn't that biasness and unjust to others? I think this was an elasticity related question. Is that what you meant, Sonal? If you could just type a yes, that will be great. Or maybe you can just ask the question yourself once again.
Sonal,
yeah. So this was related to elasticity, is what Sonal is saying.
Yeah. So I would give my opinion. It's about Sonal developing a overall culture at workplace. So a lot of cultures in the current workplace still tends to work in a workshop way, a shop floor way of working. How does this entire 8 hours or 9 hours of working come? Because initially, from the start of time, the full 24 hours day was divided into 8 hours of work, 8 hours of recreation, and 8 hours of rest. Now, over a period of time, the 8 hours of work has stayed, but 8 hours of recreation and 8 hours of rest has kind of become lesser. And the workshop style of working of many organizations still work, therefore, as per those 8 hours. So obviously, you can't change it for just one person. What I meant was trying to change the overall culture if you are the leader of the overall business or overall team. So for your team alone, even if it's a 2-member team, you can say that, okay, for the 2 of you, I would want to put productivity on top and work discipline as the second priority, if not the lowest priority, because productivity is the most important. But obviously, you can't allow just one person as compared to the rest. You'll have to keep the organization rules in place. But if you're the CEO, of course, you can change the overall rule itself.
Thank you, Guri. Riddhi has a question about honesty. She wants you to move to the slide regarding honesty. But before you do that, I had a question regarding empathy part. So, for example, you said patience is a skill which can be practiced, it can be developed. How do you develop something as deep as empathy? Is it something that you practice and become better at it, or is it something that you either have or don't?
Fantastic question. Vipin, I may not be literate enough actually to answer that question in the best manner, but how I would do it is I would look at how I treat the people I love the most. So maybe I would take my family members, some of my best friends. If I can treat everyone else also with the same viewpoint before passing a judgment, that might slowly make me better and better in empathy. But as I said, I am not literate enough to answer whether we are born with it or we can grow it over time.
So can we move to the honesty bit? I think Riddhi has a question which she wants to put on the honesty part. Riddhi, you can type or just speak.
Vipin, you can ask if she has typed it already.
Actually, I just wanted to go through it because I wanted to know about the quote by Indra Nooyi. So that's why.
Okay, so it was not a question. She wanted to look at that quote by Indra Nooyi. I hope you have taken a screenshot now.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yes.
Any other questions, Vipin, from anyone?
Yes, while others type in the chat box, I had this elasticity one also. It's more of a comment rather than a question. So I think people were having difficulty grasping this concept of elasticity. How I think it can be easily understood is, I think we had that golden circle example right at the beginning of the slide, and it had the why, how, and what part. So if you just leave the how part to the employee to a certain extent, keeping the why and what fixed, I think you have become an elastic or a flexible organization or a leader. Would that be a correct way of putting it?
Got it. Good point, Vipin. I think that's a good way of looking at it in terms of elasticity while defining boundaries. I guess that helps. Okay, let's move to the last
question. I think this was the last question, Debuji.
Yeah.
Geetika is asking, while doing self-evaluation, should one consider the critic's view or the loved one's view? I think this is a good question. So whose view should we give more importance to? People who love us or people who are probably more critical of us?
So none, actually, to answer. Self-awareness is about talking with self while comparing character traits of people we love and people we hate. So it's about rating yourself on each one of those character traits. Both the views, loved ones and hate ones, might have a slightly biased view of you. You can take that as feedback, but while doing self-evaluation, it might be a little harsh or too kind while taking the views.
Hi, Divijit. I have one question.
Yeah.
Saurabh here.
Yeah.
So, Divijit, you have told us about this piece head, and do you think that this structure or this objectives or principles can be applied to any type of organization, considering suppose if an organization is in a really growth stage right now, and it is building the things from scratch, or is it more applicable to a stable organization? So what are your views on the same?
Good question, Saurabh. I think it can be applied anywhere and everywhere. All of us stand for our own brand of leadership. So it's important that wherever you are working or we are working, we leave our own brand behind by saying that by exhibiting each one of these skills. And therefore, maybe in smaller or higher quantity, depending on how the organization culture is, a part of you has to blend in also, but can be applied everywhere in each kind of organization that you're working.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move to the last part of the presentation. I'll go a little faster in this in terms of the control. Those are personal personality traits. These are the professional skills. The first one is C, which are divided into two parts. First is the conflict resolution part. You find a lot of times where there's a conflict in workplace and you're not able to get over it, and it becomes very difficult to move on. Conflict resolutions is about very two simple things. One is identifying what the conflict is and what is causing the conflict. And second is identifying the feelings associated with the conflict. Once you've done these two things, what the origin problem was and what were the feelings associated with the conflict, it becomes comparatively easier to detach and reach a logical conclusion by doing what is right. Conflict resolution goes wrong because you start getting biased. Once you have identified neutrally what the conflict is and identifying feelings associated with it, it takes a much better shape. The second part of the C that I wanted to speak about a little bit was about the connect a leader should have. Connect is misunderstood about being highly empathetic, only working, showing love to our employees. No, connect is about being participative. For example, as simple as going to a staff event and participating can be a big example of connect. As you have already always heard people leave organizations, people leave managers, they don't leave organizations. So C in control, guys, mostly deals with conflict resolution and connect. The second one, T, big one, is in terms of how well you're keeping your employees trained. This leads to training and development. Your employees, of course, want to stay informed about the business as much as you do. So a willingness to provide opportunities is very attractive to good performers in your team. Provide opportunities for growth, development. It could be an online course. It could be funding for books. It could be part-time courses. It could just be basic feedback that you're providing to your team members. But remember, there's a difference between positive and negative feedback. Positive feedback is more frequent, more public. It's more specific. It combines with rewards. Body language becomes very critical. And in a negative feedback, of course, you have to ideally give it when you're on a one-on-one. It's given when you're more talking on a private basis. Obviously, avoid giving negative feedback when you're yourself angry or emotional. Focus on the task. Be specific, not the individual. Always focus on the task. Right? Some specific body language signs when you're giving negative feedback. Don't sit face to face with the employee. Try and sit with them and sit next to the employee. That seems more constructive rather than you being opposite to them. Also, given after the first go itself, not after they have done 3, 4, 5 mistakes. So these are some inputs in terms of the T, which is training and development of the employee, feedbacks, trainings, opportunities for growth. R is about rewards and recognitions, guys. And I have put a very special picture, a special emotion picture that I have. This is a real life picture where I had put a very small note to one of my favorite employees in my first organization, which was about 5 years ago. And the employee tells me that she still has it with her, where I had written that you are one of the very valued members in the organization. So R in rewards and recognition, guys, stands for leaders who are constantly rewarding their people. So it says rewarding routinely and recognizing relentlessly. Rewarding can come obviously once a month or a quarter or annually, but recognizing can be relentless. And recognizing is actually not just one annual function reward that they are getting. Recognizing is on the small things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. It could be a morning WhatsApp message. It could be a warm smile with a handshake or a hug. It could be an email saying, well done. It could be supporting your team members beyond work through their families, through their personal stuff. And obviously, remembering birthdays, work anniversaries, their first days at work goes a long way. Rewards and recognition, therefore, should be timely. It should be frequent. It should be visible. Obviously, inclusive. Don't just keep recognizing one person all the time. And value-based. Your organization has certain values. If it falls under those values, it kind of makes a lot more sense in terms of your rewards that you're doing. Last one. In the CTRL, can someone guess the last one? In CTRL, what does L stand for?
Lead.
And more guesses? What does L stand for?
Yeah, I think lead is a common guess. Arvind, Nabil, both are saying lead.
Yeah, so I think you're right, but there's a certain addition to it. It says lead from the front. And the most famous quote therefore goes, the 3 most important ways to lead people are by example, and by example. Now, if you're aware, team members tend to mirror your behavior. So if you're honest, hardworking, they mirror that. If you put your video on in a video call without asking others to put their video on, most probably they will also put their videos on over a period of time. If you are actually disciplined in the way you exhibit things, they will also start getting disciplined. On the other hand, they also tend to pick up on a less desirable traits. So if, for example, if you pick on people specifically over a period of time, they also start picking on people for pointing out mistakes. If you're rude in your way of working, over a period of time, they feel being rude is okay. And especially for their first jobs, Whatever you are exhibiting as a leader gets picked up for all their lives, and they make that as their leadership style. And therefore, leading by example becomes a very important one. How to lead by example? You might have doubts. Very easy. Just get your hands dirty. Do the work that your team members are doing. Watch what you say. Be very, very, very careful about what you're saying. You're in an important position. Irrespective of the position you are in, you manage people. Watch what you say. Listen to the team. Take responsibility. Let the team do their thing. Take care of yourself. These are all examples of doing their thing. Please remember, guys, always people buy into the leader much, 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 much before they buy into the vision. So therefore, guys, concluding, there are a lot of things that we spoke about today in terms of the peace head, the CTRL, the 4 different theories of managing people. There are many other things that therefore you can do. Obviously, don't try to do all the things at one go. Choose an individual skill. I spoke about many skills today. Choose one skill that you want to be good at, and try and become better at that through your mentors, through your friends, through reaching out to various YouTube, LinkedIn videos on that particular skill. Enroll in professional development courses, especially now during these corona times. Lot of courses, believe me or not, are free of cost. You can just enroll in that course. Some of them are for a few hours, some of them are for a few days, and you can slowly become better and better at what you're doing. Some of those courses are learn at ease, so you can decide when to learn and not at fixed times. Try and find a mentor or a business coach. This has always helped me in order to do better and better. And therefore, this could be someone you're close to, but someone you think is better than you. Don't select a friend whom you think you may not learn too much from. And ask other managers for feedback or advice. So something closer to what Gitika was asking, you can always ask managers for feedback or advice, which is part of your people management skill that all of you are preaching. So guys, maybe not in 2020 but 2030, 10 years later, 20 years later, people you currently work with, currently manage, someone asks them, who is your favorite leader? And if we are able to follow some of the theories, some of the skills in our day-to-day lives, maybe 10 years later, that particular team member thinks about you. And that, I think, would truly be the leadership utopia that we all should focus on or lead to. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. I'll open up the house for the last 2-3 minutes of some questions that can come up. And Vipin, you can keep helping me there. And that's all on the presentation bit. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Debujit. It was a really nice session. I think a very good acronyms were used. Peace, head, control. I think I can probably make a sentence and tuck it away in my mind that if you have a peace head, you will have a lot more control over the way you manage people. And maybe I'll have to memorize the full form, but that will help me remember. Yeah, I think there are people who are thanking. I think, Prem, if you have a question, you can please put it in the group or you can ask yourself.
So in the last bit, maybe you can just switch on our videos for the last 2-3 minutes if you're asking questions, and we can just close the session on a. I can see the videos.
So actually, there's a question in the chat. That's Prem who's asking, how do we manage team? Oh yeah, Prem, would you want to ask the question yourself?
Yeah, so one question to which I was seeking answers for this session was, sometimes we are faced with a situation where we need to manage people who are elder than us, or maybe of the same age, and in a way, no matter how good you treat them, they have a sense of undermining your authority, and this complicates the relationship a lot. Just wanted to understand your views on how do we tackle these situations.
Thanks, Prem, for asking. I think in the modern corporate world, age is just a number and has absolutely nothing to do with your leadership stature. So firstly, Prem, you need to get that out of your mind, that age is important. You need to realize that you are their manager or their team member for a reason, and have complete belief in the fact that you are capable. That's one big step, and therefore it will not show in your body language, in the way you handle that person. Secondly, irrespective of whether they're elder to you or younger to you, think about their benefit first and your benefit later. So if you are keeping their benefit as the primary objective, then automatically they will start thinking about how you will also kind of benefit. Don't seek their approval in the decisions that you are taking. Sometimes, because naturally they're older, we tend to feel we should seek their approval even if they're elder, even if they're in our teams. There is absolutely no need. The reason you are their manager is because you are more capable. If you have to take a decision, feel free to take that decision, and you don't need to seek approvals. So some of the things that is coming to my mind in terms of managing a person elder to you, don't try to massage their ego because they're elder to you. That's another thing that that becomes important. As long as they have said something relevant, appreciated. If it's not relevant, then there is no need to massage or give preferential treatment. Why they expect better treatment for you is that because you give them a better treatment. Egalitarian treatment, something I mentioned in the beginning of my slides, treat everyone equally, irrespective of age. Thanks, Prem, but great question. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, any other questions from anyone? Okay, great, guys. Thank you for attending the session. Although I had mentioned, I think 1 hour, it went for 1 hour 45. Hopefully, I'll try to be a little more time obedient from next time. And thanks all for having the patience and staying out throughout the session. It was wonderful having you all and the interactions that we could all manage throughout the session. Thank you. You can sign off with a smile. Thank you very much for attending the session today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Devajit.